4 soldiers and 2 Apaches, the Valley of Death. The mountain wind screamed through Firebase Vengeance, rattling loose sheets of corrugated metal and whipping fine dust into the air. In the dead of night, with the temperature plummeting, Sergeant Rook Castillo lay prone on the outpost's highest position, his M107.50 caliber sniper rifle resting against a stack of sandbags. He exhaled slowly, adjusting the magnification on his Leupold scope, scanning the valley below. The terrain was jagged, unforgiving. Nothing moved except the occasional gust of wind swirling through the dry brush. Then a flicker of movement. Not goats, not shepherds. A low, creeping shadow against the moonlit ridgeline. Then another, and another. Rook's finger tensed against the trigger guard as he keyed his radio. "Doc, wake the others. We got company." A half-second of silence. Then, from across the fire base, Corporal Doc Langley kicked open the barracks door, the sound cracking through the cold like a gunshot. "Rally up! We're about to get haji'd." Inside, the dim light of a flickering LED lantern barely illuminated the cramped space where 3 other soldiers lay in their cots, weapons within arm's reach. Private Joker Rivera rolled off his bed, rubbing his face with one hand while reaching for his M4 carbine with the other. His voice was groggy, but laced with dry humor. "Ain't even had my morning coffee yet." Across the room, Specialist Cowboy Hayes was already moving, strapping on his Kevlar vest and securing the chin strap on his helmet. He pulled a chewed-up Marlboro from behind his ear, tucking it between his lips before speaking. "Y'all reckon this is the big one?" His southern drawl made it sound almost casual, but his fingers worked fast, locking a mag into his M249 SAW. Outside, the sharp metallic click of bolts slamming forward echoed across the post as the team prepared for whatever was coming. Then a deep whump, whump, whump cut through the night, the unmistakable sound of rotor blades. The cavalry had arrived. Over the radio, the voice of Chief Warrant Officer Viking Sorensen came through, his tone calm but carrying a razor's edge. "Ground team, be advised. We're painting at least 100 heat signatures moving fast. You boys piss off someone important." From his perch, Rook exhaled, steadying his aim. Below, the shadows were moving faster now, closer. The battle for Firebase Vengeance had begun. The Valley of Death. The battle for Firebase Vengeance. The first RPG screamed in just as the sun's first rays crept over the jagged peaks. A deafening boom shattered the western wall of Firebase Vengeance, sending a shower of pulverized concrete, twisted rebar, and burning debris into the cold morning air. The shockwave rippled through the outpost, slamming Private Joker Rivera onto his back. Through the swirling dust and acrid smoke, Joker saw 3 Taliban fighters charging through the breach, AK-47s raised, their war cries piercing the morning silence. Joker's body moved on instinct, years of training surging through his veins. He dropped to one knee, shouldered his M4 carbine, and squeezed the trigger. The weapon barked, muzzle flashing in the dusty dawn, his rounds stitched across the chests of the first 2 fighters, cutting them down mid-stride. The third man raised his rifle, too late. Joker's next burst sent him sprawling backward, lifeless. "That's for my cousin in the towers, mother." Before he could finish, the air was ripped apart by the deep, guttural growl of a DSHK 12.7mm heavy machine gun. From the ridge above, the Soviet-era gun opened fire, sending a hailstorm of massive .50 caliber rounds tearing through the fire base. Sandbags exploded like puffed rice. Bullets chewed through plywood walls, slicing the air with terrifying high-pitched wails. From his sniper perch, Sergeant Rook Castillo ducked as splinters rained over him. He keyed his radio, voice raw with urgency. "Apache 1, we need fire on that ridge, now!" The radio crackled, then the voice of Captain Priest O'Malley came through, calm, deliberate, but laced with tension. "Negative, ground team. Stinger team on the ridge. We make one pass, and we're lawn darts." Joker cursed, slamming a fresh mag into his rifle. The Taliban had anti-aircraft missiles. That meant their only air support was grounded unless they took out the Stinger crew manually. Blood and smoke. Across the courtyard, Corporal Doc Langley was dragging Specialist Cowboy Hayes behind a stack of sandbags, his hands already slick with blood. A jagged 7.62mm round had torn through Cowboy's shoulder, leaving a deep, oozing wound. Doc ripped open a quick-clot packet, dumping the powder into the wound as Cowboy hissed through clenched teeth. "Took one in the shoulder, boss," Doc called out over the radio. "Ain't bad." Cowboy's face twisted into a grimace, but then, through the pain, he grinned. He reached for his M203 grenade launcher, still attached to his rifle, and chambered a 40mm he round with his good arm. "Guess I'm shooting left-handed now." He rolled onto his side, raised the launcher, and lobbed a grenade toward the machine gun nest on the ridge. A half-second later, a thunderous KRA coom sent dirt and bodies flying. Hell in the mountains. The battle raged for hours. The Apaches made surgical strikes where they could, their 30mm chain guns shredding Taliban fighters into unrecognizable smears against the rock. Every few minutes, a Hellfire missile would arc toward a fortified position, turning boulders into craters and fighters into mist. But the enemy was relentless. Mortar rounds rained down on the outpost, sending shrapnel knifing through the air. Ammo was running low. Cowboy's shoulder was turning his uniform dark red. Joker's trigger finger was numb. And then it happened. A plume of smoke erupted from the ridge. "Incoming!" Rook yelled. The Taliban Stinger team had fired. From above, Viking's Apache tried to roll, but the missile was locked. A second later, the RPG slammed into the tail rotor. A ball of flame erupted from the chopper, thick black smoke trailing as the aircraft buckled and spun. For a second, silence. Then, over the radio, Viking's voice cool as ice. "Just scratches," he lied, even as smoke poured from his airframe. The battle wasn't over yet. Last stand at Firebase Vengeance. By noon, the outpost was overrun. Taliban fighters swarmed through the ruined western wall, stepping over the charred remains of their fallen. Bullet casings littered the ground, the air thick with the stench of cordite, blood, and burning flesh. Smoke curled from sandbags that had been shredded by heavy machine gun fire. The once proud Firebase Vengeance, their home, their battlefield, was now a crumbling graveyard. Only 4 soldiers remained: Rook, Joker, Doc, and Cowboy. The final stand. With nowhere left to fall back, the team retreated into the comms bunker, their last defensible position. It was a cramped, dimly lit room, reinforced with thick steel doors, sandbags, and old ammunition crates. The air inside was hot, stale, suffocating. Joker, hands blackened with soot, pulled a thermite grenade from his vest. He cracked it open, the molten iron igniting in a blinding white flare, and began welding the door shut. Sparks rained down like fiery tears as he worked, his breathing ragged. Outside, the Taliban fighters pounded on the steel, their voices a chorus of rage in Pashto and Arabic. Joker stepped back, sweating, shaking, and nodded. "Ain't nobody getting through that." Cowboy, pale and slumped against the wall, spat a thick glob of blood onto the concrete floor. His left arm dangled uselessly, his shoulder wound seeping through his uniform. His breathing was shallow. He gritted his teeth and muttered, "That door ain't holding forever." Doc, his gloved hands trembling, reached into his med kit and pulled out a morphine syringe, the last one. He held it up, turning to the group. "Who wants it?" Silence. Broken arrow. Rook wiped the sweat from his brow, his fingers trembling as he reached for the radio. He pressed the transmit button, his voice steady but hollow. "Apache 1, this is Firebase Vengeance. We are declaring Broken Arrow." The radio hissed. Static filled the void. Then, Captain Priest O'Malley's voice came through, sharp and stunned. "Say again, ground team." Rook swallowed hard. He looked at his men, bloodied, exhausted, broken, and knew this was it. I repeat, Broken Arrow. All assets authorized, danger close. A long silence. Then Priest's voice, quieter this time. Ground team? You sure? Cowboy lifted his head, his lips curling into a bloody grin. He spat another glob of blood onto the floor. Do it! Hellfire from above. The sky turned to fire. From the north, 2 Apaches rolled in like angels of death, their rotors thundering through the valley. The pilots, their hearts hardened by war, flipped their weapon systems to full auto. Hellfire missiles streaked down, their trails of smoke and fire carving through the mountain. The shock waves hit first, like a giant's fist slamming the earth, followed by the detonations. Entire Taliban squads were vaporized, their bodies flung hundreds of feet as the missiles tore through stone, flesh, and bone. Hydra rockets followed, ripping into enemy strongholds, collapsing caves and trenches, sending the wounded screaming into the burning rubble. Then came the 30-millimeter chain guns, their deafening brrrr-TT shattering what remained of the enemy forces. The rounds tore through bodies like paper, leaving nothing but red mist and silence in their wake. The bunker shook violently, the walls groaning as the shock waves rolled through. Inside, the 4 men huddled against the trembling earth, gritting their teeth as the world above them died in fire and fury. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. Into hell's aftermath. The dust settled. The bunker door was scalding hot from the barrage outside. The air was thick with burning flesh and molten metal. Rook coughed, his lungs filled with smoke and death. Joker was the first to move, grabbing his rifle and limping toward the exit. He pressed his shoulder against the steel, then slowly, cautiously, pulled it open. Sunlight spilled into the bunker, but it was no longer golden. It was orange and red, the reflection of a world reduced to cinders and blood. They stepped out into hell. The valley, once teeming with enemy fighters, was now a smoldering wasteland. Bodies, or what was left of them, lay strewn across the charred earth. The ridgeline, once a fortified Taliban stronghold, was now a pile of rubble and corpses. Cowboy, his face pale and drenched in sweat, let out a dry, hollow laugh. "Shit, boys, we still alive?" Joker clutched his rifle, scanning the devastation. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Doc exhaled, looking at the syringe still clutched in his palm. Rook, his sniper rifle slung over his back, stared at the sky, the smoke still rising from Apache 1's last pass. Then, over the radio, Priest's voice. "Firebase Vengeance, you still breathing?" Rook lifted the radio to his lips, his voice low, cracked, but steady. "Just barely." The battle was over, but the war was far from done. Firebase Vengeance still stands. The dust had barely settled. The air was thick with cordite, burning flesh, and the lingering stench of war. The once proud ridgeline stronghold of the Taliban was now nothing more than a smoldering graveyard, bodies scattered like broken dolls, their weapons lying untouched in the dirt. 94 dead, 6 missing. Rook stood amid the wreckage, his sniper rifle slung over his back, his body sore from the relentless battle. He counted the bodies, eyes scanning over the charred, twisted corpses. Some were half buried under rubble, others still clutching their weapons, fingers stiff in death. He muttered, more to himself than anyone else, 94. Joker wiped blood and soot from his face, his knuckles raw from the fight. He kicked over the corpse of a Taliban commander, pulling a blood-stained map from his vest. 6 missing, he grunted. Probably slithered off into the caves. Cowboy, wounded but grinning, leaned against the wreckage of a Taliban pickup truck, reloading his M4 with shaky hands. "Let 'em run," he spat. "Means we ain't done yet." Doc crouched next to a lifeless fighter, prying a Stinger missile tube from his stiff fingers. He turned it over, inspecting it. The launcher was still armed, still functional. His heart skipped a beat. He looked up at Rook, his voice grave. "1 Stinger missile. last rounds unused. Above them, the last Apache circles overhead. Viking's Apache wobbled through the smoke-clogged sky, its tail rotor barely holding together. The once mighty gunship, scarred and battered, had given everything it had to keep them alive. Viking's voice crackled over the radio, strained but steady. "Ground team, we're Winchester. No ammo. Got maybe enough fuel to get home. If we're lucky." Rook adjusted his grip on the stinger, his fingers tightening around the launcher. He looked around at his men, exhausted, bloodied, running on nothing but adrenaline and sheer willpower. They were alone now, no reinforcements, no air support, just them, their rifles, and the empty valley stretching out into the unknown. His eyes drifted to the setting sun, gold and crimson over the jagged peaks of the Hindu Kush. The enemy was still out there. The 6 missing fighters had vanished into the caves, but they wouldn't stay gone for long. They would return, with more men, with more firepower, with vengeance in their hearts. Rook lifted the radio, pressing the transmit button. His voice was low but resolute. "Tell command, we're keeping the place. The next wave is coming." Joker let out a breathless laugh, shaking his head as he checked his last magazine. "Hell yeah, we are." Cowboy, still slumped against the wreckage, gave a blood-stained thumbs up. "Damn right." Doc finished securing the Stinger missile, setting it up near the sandbags, its targeting system blinking to life. He wiped the sweat from his brow. "Next one's ours." The 4 of them reloaded their weapons, bodies aching but spirits unbroken. They had survived the impossible, and yet here they stood, ready for more. In the distance, beyond the wreckage, beyond the still-smoking battlefield, a single radio crackled to life. The words spoken in Pashto sent a ripple of unease through the mountains. "The Americans are still there.